Welcome to Career Uprising. I'm your host and professional career coach, Lorraine Rise. Join me as I guide you through an amazing journey of self-discovery and empowerment. If you are looking for work, changing careers, or stuck in a toxic job, then this is the show for you. I offer both practical and spiritual guidance to help you up-level and advance your career. Let's start the uprising. Hey everyone, you are listening to episode 72, The Workforce Today, What 5 Generations Together Means for You. So before we get started, guys, take a quick moment and hit subscribe if you're on iTunes or however you like to listen to the show. That way you'll never miss an episode, and you can also pay it forward with a review. I would appreciate that so much, and it really helps the show. So, how are you guys? It's going to be mid-February now. This show coming out, 2020 is rolling along, and I have to tell you, I've got a cool show today. It's going to be a little shorter one. It's kind of a quick message, but I want to talk about an idea that has been kind of fascinating to me and on my mind and so relevant. It's kind of a big picture idea. History is being made right before our eyes. It is. For the first time ever, there's no less than 5 generations working together, side by side in the workplace. The workplace has never been more diverse. I think this is so exciting. And a lot of people who I've shared this with are pretty blown away to learn that there are 5 generations working together. That is a lot. That's 20-year-olds up to 70-plus-year-olds. And I think it's really cool that this is where we are. This is the modern workforce. And like anything, of course, it has both its opportunities and its challenges. So as many of you know, of course, if you know my story a little bit, I traded being an employee for being an entrepreneur about 5 years ago. And I still do consulting on the side, still have a couple of consulting gigs. So I've kind of got one foot in the working world a little bit. And I enjoy that very much. I like having a combination of both. It gives me multiple streams of income, for one, but also helps me to expand my network, meet new people, and just keep things interesting. But I thought about this concept because I didn't really think it applied to me too much, not really being in a traditional job. I'm not going to an office every day. But when I think about it, so one of the companies that I consult for, the gentleman who I do work with who owns it, he's in his 70s. He's twice my age easily. So it kind of hit home for me. I was like, wow, this concept, it really is true. You know, here I am working with somebody who's a grandfather, but still very much active in the workforce. So it's kind of funny when I thought about this. It turns out it does still apply to me. And then I also, on the flip side of that, I also do consulting directly for LinkedIn. I'm really, really honored that over the last couple of years, LinkedIn has approached me and asked me to support them as a consultant with a lot of new initiatives. So, doing a lot of pilot programs to add new features and new value to the premium membership. So I'm excited about this. I'm in the midst of one of those programs now and getting ready to take on another one. So I'm really excited to be working directly with LinkedIn and partnering with them. So that's another consulting gig that I've had for a while. But on the opposite side, I work, as you can imagine, with mostly 20-somethings there because they're out in California and Silicon Valley working for a social media company. So the people that I am conversing with there are on the opposite end of the spectrum. They're a good 10, 12, 15 years younger than me. So I feel like I'm kind of sandwiched in the middle, right? We'll go through what all the different generations are in just a minute. But what I've learned is being a millennial, but an older millennial. I'm like right on the cusp of millennial and Gen X. I'm literally like right in the middle. So it's kind of fitting that I'm working with both somebody in the older generation, the 70s, and then the youngest, the millennials or even Gen Z. So I feel like I'm sandwiched a little bit. It's kind of cool. But so what are these 5 generations? Let's break them down. Okay. So the oldest generation, we have the traditionalists, also known as the silent generation. Those are folks born before 1946. Then we have baby boomers, born between 1946 and 1964. So they're roughly in their 60s. So traditionalists are in their 70s approximately. Baby boomers are in their 60s. Gen X, born between 1965 and 1976. They're about in their 40s and 50s. Gen Y, or millennials, that's my group, born between 1977 and 1997, so they're in their 30s for the most part. And then Gen Z, born after 1997. They're in their 20s. And especially thinking about people, born in the 2000s. Even people who are born in the 2000s are entering the workforce right now. And I'm like, people were born in the 2000s? It sounds dumb, but I'm like, wow, that's fascinating. People were born in the 2000s, like as if people stopped being born. You know what I mean? It's kind of silly, but when you really stop and think about it, we kind of don't think beyond when we were born. So there you have it. Traditionalists, baby boomers, Gen X, Gen Y, and Gen Z. I don't know what the generation after that will be. I guess that might be my daughter's generation. I don't know what she is. Well, we'll have to start the alphabet all over again. I don't know. But let's talk about what this means. So whatever the differences with people are, I think that we're quick to focus on that, right? That's where a lot of the tension comes from. Differences can, it seems, seemingly naturally bring conflict. But I think that they can really just as easily bring opportunity. It can bring an opportunity for unity, patience, collaboration. The differences themselves, I don't think actually bring conflict. I think it's the magnified focus on the differences and specifically the belief that your way is the right or only way to do something. That's what causes people suffering. That's what causes conflict, not the differences themselves. It's the belief that those differences are somehow a problem. But all problems are thought problems. I really believe that. Everything can be corrected with a new perspective and seen as no longer a problem. That's a whole nother episode. But all problems are thought problems. So this is something that we can apply to this diverse workforce today. Because if you think about it, it's the mindset that causes the conflict. Diversity itself is just neutral. It's just a fact. It just is. There's nothing inherently bad or conflicting about that. It's what we do with it and what we make it mean. Because what every person wants, no matter how old they are, where they come from, they want to be heard. That's it. That's what everyone wants. And when generations have conflict with each other, it's because one or both of those parties don't feel heard. And when we don't feel heard, we make it mean that we're not valued. That's the problem. It's really that simple. So whenever I'm dealing with someone different than myself or who I think is challenging to work with, I always I strive to ask myself, what is this person teaching me? What are they teaching me about myself? And how can I change my approach to communicate with them? So, having been somewhat removed from the working world over the last couple of years, I wanted to do a little bit of research on this topic and get some insights from somebody who is in the workforce and has experience today hiring and working with different generations. So I put out a request on LinkedIn to my network for some help with this topic, and I got some instant feedback. I was very pleased. So I did kind of an informational interview with somebody who was in my network, but not somebody that I knew. Actually, a perfect stranger, which is really cool, right? So I found David Torres, and David has experience hiring and managing people of different generations. So I interviewed him, and he's, by the way, is the CEO of the tech startup FeedMe. So you can learn more about them online, but That's what David does. So he's a tech startup CEO. And he spent a few minutes with me on the phone, and we kind of talked about, what's going on in the workforce today. What are you observing? What stereotypes are kind of true? Which ones are not true? And I got some interesting answers. So and I want to make a little side note here too, before we get into it. What I just did in terms of putting a request out for some help on LinkedIn and doing an informational interview, you can do that too. You can reach out to perfect strangers on LinkedIn for your job search, changing careers. That's something that I advocate is if you don't have the answer to something, find someone who does. That's a beautiful thing about the World Wide Web and technology today is that we're connected, right? So you can easily go out there and find someone to connect with. So informational interviews are awesome. And you should do them in your job search and changing careers. So little side note, the coach in me that just wanted to say that. But so I asked David what he observed with different generations in the workforce today. And here's a little bit of what he had to say. He said that he noticed that millennials are often strapped with student loan debt. And that has a little bit of an effect on some of their career choices sometimes, and specifically whether or not they'll take risks. And I thought that was interesting. That was not what I was expecting, but I think that is true. I think that student loan debt is real. The struggle is real. I've had student loans in the past, so I understand that. And, the more debt and obligations you have, that can affect maybe your career path choice or how long you stay in a job just because it's well paying or anything like that. Plus, millennials like myself lived through the 2008 downturn in the crash of the economy. So he said that as well also makes them kind of not as big of risk takers sometimes, having gone through all of that. So I thought that was an interesting observation that I wouldn't have thought of, but he said also in his experience that he noticed that Gen Z has a little bit more freedom to be flexible, a little bit more selective in their jobs, may also have a little bit less student loan debt, and just kind of maybe might change jobs or, take a little bit more risks, be more selective, things like that. That was interesting. Again, I do think, what's also playing into that, of course, is the freelance gig economy, working remote. It's giving a lot of people more flexibility, and somewhat with millennials, but even more with Gen Z, they're growing up being used to that. So I think it makes sense that they would value that and feel more comfortable with that than other generations that had more of the traditional working model. So that's kind of my insight to piggyback on that a little bit. So I asked David, what are the biggest benefits that he thought of a diverse workforce? And he said broader perspectives. And I totally agree. I think that broad perspectives and varied perspectives are critical for really being able to problem solve and come up with creative solutions for things. So when you get people together who have different life paths, naturally you're going to get different perspectives. And I think that's a good thing. Personally, I think also just having a wider talent pool is a huge benefit. When companies can attract better talent and broaden up perspectives and have an inclusive culture, they're going to make more money. Absolutely. And this has been proven. There are studies to back this up, that companies that are more diverse make more profits. Okay. And they attract better talent. It all feeds into each other. It makes sense. So how about the stereotype that younger managers don't want to hire older workers? I had to slip that one in and ask him about that. He said he felt like that was true to a certain extent. And it's not that younger managers flat out don't want to hire older workers. They probably just don't understand. They need more training. They need more support in order to understand how older workers bring value and where they fit into the organization. So I think it's well-intentioned, but we need to really train and support our younger managers to appreciate them and understand them and change some of their interviewing and hiring practices. So it's true, he said, to a certain extent, but he did also dispel the myth that millennials just kind of, quote, want a trophy for everything. I think I've heard that before. So that's funny that people think that millennials just kind of want rewards for everything. Maybe there's some that do, but in his experience, he said he found that that's really not always that true. So, so thank you, David, for your insights. It was a great phone call, and I love that I was able to get somebody else's perspective because, like I said, I didn't want to do a solo show just on this because I thought, I don't know, there's somebody else out there probably with more experience than me. I've kind of been taking a different path. So this was very eye-opening for me to do as well. So also you guys, I want to say this too. You guys know that I coach mostly mid and late career professionals, mostly older folks, but I was recently asked to give a few talks at a local community college where I live here in the Northern Virginia area. And I love public speaking, so of course I said yes, although this is not my target audience at all, which is fine, but I have to say I didn't really know what to expect speaking to such a young audience. And at both talks that I gave, I was really blown away by the maturity and the engagement of my young audience. These were folks in their 20s. I almost said kids. You still are kind of a kid when you're in your 20s, but it was a great experience. I got a lot of good, thoughtful questions. Several of them followed up with me and connected on LinkedIn. I had a blast, and I really did not see evidence of a lot of the stereotypes of the younger generation. I did not see eyes rolling, phones out, people texting under the table and whatnot. I really didn't. I think it is really amazing what we see when we see things for what they really are, not just what we are, right? See things for the way they really are, not just what we are. We usually see things for what we are. But when you expand that and just look at something really objectively with an open mind, I think you'll see something else. I definitely did myself. So, all right, there you have it again. A short message for today. I hope you guys benefited from this. You can always find me at careeruprising.com. Join my email community, stay in touch with me and everything that I am doing. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day. That's it for today's show. Thank you so much for listening. If you like what you heard today, please consider giving the show a positive review on iTunes. It would mean a lot to me, and it would help to spread the word so that others can learn about the show. Thanks again for tuning in, and I can't wait to connect with you again next time on Career Uprising.
This show was brought to you by InflowRadio.com. The best curated talk radio network for personal development, wellness, spirituality, and conscious business.